Hello and welcome to Back to the Feature, the show we talk about movies past, present, and future. Today we're keeping into the present by talking about the future. We're talking about Blade Runner 2049. Blade Runner 2049 stars Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford in a movie directed by Denis Villeneuve, as you know from Prisoners, Sicario, and also Arrival from this last year. And it's also produced by Ridley Scott, the man responsible for the original Blade Runner. I think just in that team alone, there is so much to be excited for. I mean, when we first heard about this movie, we were both immediately excited. It just the way it looked, this director, this actor, Harrison Ford coming back, all these things falling into place for this movie. We couldn't have been anticipating this one anymore.
No, this is probably my biggest anticipated film of the year, and I'm a way bigger Star Wars fan. Just saying. But just with the team that this film has, and then Hans Zimmer doing the original music, and Roger Deakins, the amazing, great Roger Deakins on cinematography. It looks amazing.
Yeah, it is mind-blowingly beautiful, I think. Just so much of just the color and the lighting and the textures and the world, just everything is so just so fully brought to the forefront. Everything feels so real and tangible, lived in what we expect from a Blade Runner world.
This movie far exceeded my expectations, though, and my expectations were high for this film. I just can't believe this film is just visually gorgeous, but it's not just visually gorgeous. It's so real. Everything is so real. All the sets and all the practical effects. I haven't seen a movie done in modern times at this same level.
Yeah, I think I would definitely agree. I think that it's really, like we're kind of saying, it's this all-star team of, I think, a lot of people who are currently at the top of their game, especially Denis Villeneuve. I think that pretty much every movie I've ever seen from him has been amazing. I really like the movie Enemy. There's still a couple more that I need to see from his filmography.
I think after this movie, he's definitely solidified himself as a master, a pure master, and someone that will live on. He will be remembered for a long time. I mean, this just solidifies it.
I think that it's funny because I think, to me, this year in general has done a lot towards solidifying certain directors as, I think, all-time greats. And I mean, there's some that, obviously were already really established, but we got a lot of movies so far from our modern greats. And I think we've thrown around names like Tarantino and Scorsese, enough over the years. And I think that there are directors like Edgar Wright with Baby Driver, Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan's newest film, and now Denis coming back again this year with something of this caliber. It's been such a great year, and a great year for these directors, and I think some people that really are showing that we have some directors to look to in the future of cinema going forward for a long time to come.
The production value in this movie is unprecedented. It's shocking to see a film of this caliber look the way it did. I just can't believe a studio allowed it to happen, and we've already seen it's bombing at the box office. So people, go out and watch this movie. Pay your money for it, please. If you're going to see another movie, just pay for a ticket for this one, because we want more movies like this. It is just something else, and just going off of Roger Deakins too. Roger Deakins has never won an Oscar for cinematography. He's been nominated, I think, 12 times.
Too many times.
Yeah, way too many times. And people are already calling it, he needs to win his Oscar for this one. And I will say, the interior lighting in this film, it's some of the best I've ever seen. It's almost like the light had its own characteristic. There's just so many things, so many subtle things, so many things they didn't even need to do, but they added it in there. Just add a little more flavor, a little more spice to each scene, and it really just fills it out.
I think that this is probably some of the best uses of darkness and shadow, but having clarity through it, that I've ever seen, probably since the movie Seven by David Fincher, which I think is one of the greatest at doing that. And I think this movie may even exceed what he's capable of doing. There's scenes with Jared Leto in particular where those things stick out so much. The clarity of vision, I think, not just from a visual standpoint, but I think that this story as well, and that is the other part of this that I think is done so well. And in a lot of ways, to me, it's these characters and the story that honestly, I think, pushed this movie a little bit past the first Blade Runner for me. I think especially the character of Kay and Ryan Gosling's performance in this film.
It's very good.
When as soon as I saw him in the trailers, I kind of just I knew that he was going to be the perfect fit for this film, and he's able to. I don't think it's really a spoiler to say that this Blade Runner is a replicant. They get that right out of the gate. They tell you this. I mean, it's from the first scene that you know that he's a replicant. It's a big part of his character to actually see this from his perspective. And just the way that his mind works and the way that he thinks of things and the things he becomes attached to, or as much as he can become attached to things. There are parts of humanity that are missing with him. And it's so interesting to watch him in this story, experiencing these very human things, experiencing doubt and fear, love, curiosity. And it's Ryan Gosling is just the perfect person to play that kind of role.
I think really touching off that, just going back to Denis Villeneuve, and something about this movie is that it's expansion on the original, and the creation of this sequel. It's its own film. It's a standalone. It tells its story start to finish, but it's such a great sequel too. It's an amazing sequel, and just I can't wait to watch the first one and the second one on Blu-ray together. It's just the reverence that Denis Villeneuve had for the original one and how it everyone, Roger Deakins and Hans Zimmer, the score is just fantastic and everything. Mm-hmm. I just haven't seen a movie where there's so much care put into honoring the original one, and then just expanding upon that and really just digging into the themes and the lore going forward.
Yeah, I think that he built upon the world brilliantly with the ways that he has this replicant, this new Nexus 8, the way that the technology has advanced, the society has advanced. It feels like 30 years after that world we saw in the first Blade Runner, and the characters feel also that they have been living in this world that we know is established. We know how this thing is supposed to work, and I think that he is able to it's almost hard to say the word sequel when you're watching it because it's just the stigma we have with the word sequel.
Yeah.
It is such a perfect continuation of it, and revisiting that world, it's, I think, pretty seamless. The way that he's able to bring everything 30 years in the future without it feeling like a blockbuster, bells and whistles, hey, look at this. It feels like a lived-in real world, real character.
I'll just say it. I think it's one of the greatest sequels ever made. And I mean, there's the Empire Strikes Back. There's Terminator 2. There's the ones that we know. But this is just something that was done 35 years later. This came out 8 years before I was born. The first film, and the fact that this sequel has come out and just seamless into this one, it's really is unprecedented. It's almost. I don't have words to even describe some of it.
Yeah,
I'm speechless.
There's just honestly imagery and emotions in this movie that I don't think that a lot of movies could really take a sequel and be able to have all of that in there and have it all work. There's so many moving parts, so many places this thing could have stumbled with expectations, with its production, with the fact of its ambition. It's definitely one of these movies that we've gotten this year that I'm so surprised that the studios are greenlighting. Something like Mother just last month where you're like, Paramount put this out? Like, what the fuck? Where and then something like this where I think that's definitely where you're gonna see negatives for other people. I really don't have too many negatives with this, but it's the pacing. A lot of people, and in the first Blade Runner, I think that's a common complaint, is the pacing of the film.
Yeah, it's a 3-hour movie. It's a slow pace, and I've said this to a few people that have asked me my thoughts and opinions on it without just right out of the gate. I was like, it's a long movie. If you can't sit still, if you can't pay attention for 3 hours of a lot of quiet moments and a lot of subtle acting and a lot of different themes being presented, underlying themes, not even stuff that's on the nose. It's really stuff that's just playing through the current of the film. Maybe that's an issue with you, if you can't sit for a long time. Personally, I was glad that I was able to watch 3 hours of this film. I just didn't want it to end. It's just something else.
For me, as a 3-hour film, it breezed by. It really just breezed by. Every scene and moment in it to me was engaging and interesting. I never was trying to look at my watch or text someone else or...
No, I had my phone off.
Yeah, I think the only thing for me that I knew that the movie was long was how bad I had to pee when I was leaving. I was rushing to the bathroom, and I think that's the only thing that felt like a 3-hour movie was my bladder.
Because you couldn't get up to go to the bathroom.
I wasn't going to.
I think really touching on that too about a studio greenlighting this, that really surprised me, and it really is touching on the length of the film. Is there's a lot of scenes in this movie that I felt like a typical movie and a typical studio would have cut. Mm-hmm. They would have cut a bunch of scenes. And they decided to leave it in. They decided to trust Villeneuve's vision in this film. It doesn't feel like it was interfered with at all.
And honestly, when I was watching it, it's a movie for real grown-ups. It's a movie for adults. It's a movie for real adults with patience who can sit down and watch something. There are controversial ideas. There is all the elements of life: love, sex, violence, death. Like, all these things are coming into play in this movie, and if it has to be a Marvel movie in 90 minutes, this movie is going to be tough for you. But I really think that this movie has so much value in the ideas that it presents. Some ideas that we have seen before, but I think that with the way that it's conceptualized with Kay, and also the love story in this, his love interest in this. There's things that are explored there, and I don't want to give you any spoilers about how that works, that I've never seen in a sci-fi movie before, as some of the best sci-fi ideas and scenes come to life. And some very adult themes that are explored therein.
I think that's another impressive thing, and that's really touching off of what makes it a sequel, is the ideas that Blade Runner presented and the type of science fiction that Blade Runner originated has been played out throughout the years. And obviously 35 years is a long time for sci-fi to pump out a ton of movies that followed Blade Runner. These ideas have been played out, but I think that this movie really recaptures the exact tone, the exact feel, and the exact themes that the first film presented. It does not feel like it's ripping off anything in between. Mm-hmm. It feels like it's going right back to exactly what spawned this, and I think that is just all on the shoulders of Villeneuve, and I applaud.
It is, for me watching it, there's so many great films, and so many great films that they recently remade that are influences, that Blade Runner is a huge influence on the world that Blade Runner presented. And, things like Ghost in the Shell we got this year, and this is the movie we should have got for that. When I was watching it, I was like, this is how the Ghost in the Shell movie should have made me feel. And it just didn't. And I think that this is where you really see the divide between the things that, some things can share the imagery of Blade Runner, but very few things I think can really touch on the thematic ideas properly.
And it's just, I applaud the studio too. I am honestly a bit speechless. I've just never felt as transported to a world like what Blade Runner 2049 did for me since Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the world that it built is so grand. Its scope is so massive, and you just feel like you're there.
Yeah. It's a definite achievement. I think, visually, production-wise. What are your thoughts, though, on the story, then, for Blade Runner?
I really enjoy. I love science fiction. Mm-hmm. I love philosophy, and I love these types of questions being asked.
Yeah.
And it's also it's always great to reflect on humanity in that way. And I don't know. I really enjoyed the story from start to finish. I was very engaged in the mystery. I was very engaged with Kay, Ryan Gosling's character, and honestly, it's just I love that noir. I love the detective stuff in it, and it does it really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite genres is crime and noir, mysteries. That's always been something that really is just one of my favorite types of genres, and this movie is one of the best ones of that genre. from that standpoint of being a big fan of these type of stories, these kinds of detective stories, it was extremely satisfying from that aspect. Like, as a noir movie, or a neo-noir, it is one of the greatest ones ever made. To me now, it really would be, it's the greatest neo-noir ever made. But if you don't see genre division lines, like I try not to sometimes, I think we could put it in that genre easily, and I think that it could hold it toe-to-toe with classics. And, it's just, movies like this don't come around very often. Go and see this. Why aren't you seeing this, guys? Please.
Yeah.
Like, even just to look at just the beautiful imagery and go see it. Maybe you like Ryan Gosling, ladies, guys. Even if you don't love the story or the pacing, or if you're a big fan of Blade Runner, if you're not a big fan of Blade Runner, this is something to go see. There is just something in here for everybody. For just every human being, there is something in here. So, I'd say we've gone over our positives. As in, we've just gushed a bunch about Blade Runner 2049 without too many specifics. And we've gone through our negatives. John, what is your final summary and grade for Blade Runner 2049?
I've been saying it throughout this whole review, but I guess to really just summarize, I think that this film is a landmark achievement in cinema. I believe that this is a master director putting out master work, and just everyone involved at the top of their game. Roger Deakins, Hans Zimmer, the entire crew that put these sets together. It's just something else. It's mind-blowing. It's jaw-dropping. This film is fantastic. It's one of the best this year. Easy. It's probably one of the best this decade. In all honesty, it's one of the great. It's just one of the greats. It's one that's going to be remembered for a long time. So I don't really think I need to say anything else than that. Besides, I can't wait to see the next film that Denny puts out. Blade Runner 2049, I give an A+.
I could talk even more about the visuals in this movie, but I cannot express enough how much the emotional through line and thematic elements of this movie work so well. Its reflection on humanity and the soul, where that begins and where it ends. I think it does it better than a lot of other films that try to touch the ideas. It expands upon the original ideas that Blade Runner started out with in 1982, and expands its world in beautiful ways that we did not think, that was possible. That someone could actually do that, and it feels so natural, and feel like we are seeing this world 30 years later. It's an unprecedented achievement visually, and it is a completely great movie, top to bottom. Detective K is going to be one of my favorite characters in films going forward. His story, to me, watching Ryan Gosling play this role, it is a career-defining role. He does some of his greatest work. There are so many emotional ups and downs that he's able to convey with so little words. There is no one that could have played this role better. I'm also going to give Blade Runner 2049 an A+. So guys, that's been our thoughts and our review today of Blade Runner 2049. Please tell me in the comments that you saw this. You don't have to say anything else. Just please tell me, Giovanni, I saw it. And it'll make me happy.
Yeah.
Tell me anything you'd like to say in the comments about Blade Runner 2049. If you liked it, if you loved it, if you hated it, if you didn't get it, we'll talk about it. You can find us on our Twitter at BacktoFeature, and you can find us on our Facebook at /BacktoFeature. I've been Giovanni Carlo.
And I'm John Vanderloo.
And we'll see you guys next time.
The future of the species is finally unearthed.